Good to see you. I love your world's map back there.
Yes, that's an old purchase from IKEA probably. It's a
Nice.
fun map.
Yeah. Does it have countries mapped out? I mean, have you had to update it?
No. No. I don't know. It's more of a piece of art than like an actual reference, but it reminds me how big the world is, you
Yeah,
know.
the world really is.
It is, and when you feel like, oh my gosh, my issues are big, you think, no, big is the world.
Yeah, all relative, isn't it?
We're just a little dot in a dot in a dot.
With your one-on-one client that you've got, what kind of, say, result are you trying to get her or promising her? When she comes in, she gives you $3,000.
Yeah, she has specific goals about what she has specific targets for blood levels, um, of different, cholesterol and blood sugars and weight goals and those types of things. So we're
Okay.
working on that, like very specific stuff for her. Um, and I'm finishing up working with another one-on-one that was looking same kind of thing. They have history of cardiovascular events, so they're looking to, lower their blood lipids, they're looking to decrease medications, those types of things, as well as not soft skills, but gain more confidence in the kitchen with making plant foods that are whole food, plant-based,
Mm-hmm.
healthful, um, and that work around their lifestyle. They're
Mm-hmm.
traveling or what have you. So those types of um, those types of outcomes that will persist, that they'll use basically a toolbox of not only recipes and but techniques and um, so that when we're done, they beyond now can do a better job taking care of themselves going forward, and staying on this route of this kind of eating pattern. Um, I think both right now of those clients were they definitely weren't plant-based, 100% plant-based before, but that was a goal. And so, some are further along in the process than others, but it's that sustainability piece. It's that I want to be able to stay like this. I don't want to roll back, and slip back to some of my old habits or feeling bored or feeling in a rut, and so I want to have options. So being able to teach them how to have options, even when I'm not there, like I said, kind of the tools in the toolbox, and some of the, most important strategies that I have shared with them to make eating this way delicious and fun and manageable, and not like, oh, I have to spend 5 hours a day preparing all this food. No, you don't have to. And then one piece that's been interesting for both, which is pretty consistent with all the one-on-one work that I've done and my membership, is helping to integrate into families who are not plant-based whole food. So keeping the peace, because you want to be able to continue eating this way for your own reasons, your health or ethics or what have you. But you also need to live in the house with your family. And it can't be something that is a constant fight, that's a constant tension, because you're either going to leave that way of eating or your relationships are going to suffer and your quality of life. Yeah, you may be eating great, but you may be unhappy, and that it just kind of defeats the purpose. So to be able to help them so that not everybody has to eat the same way, but everybody is okay, which comes back
So
down to my book.
going into that point where you
Yeah.
mentioned that, the families are not necessarily a part of that eating plan, what do you find is other than them saying, "Hey, you should eat some meat," what sorts of like foods would you say are the ones that are, say, the hardest to give up, or the most problematic foods
Problematic.
between the, we'll say, the two sides of the family?
I don't think it really ends up being a food type, although, one easy answer to that would be cheese, but it's only because often people who want to go plant-based whole food, that's their biggest struggle. So that's what, it's oh, I could do it except for the cheese. And then if the family has cheese and they haven't fully like disengaged, then it's like, well, a little cheese won't hurt, depending on their, position. I mean, if they are ethical vegans, it doesn't matter. A little cheese or a lot of cheese, there's no cheese. But if they're on that health spectrum and that's the reason, it's very easy for people to just, oh, I was so good today, and then to have
Interesting.
that at home, is difficult. But I think the tension comes more with, you better make something else because I'm not eating that. From the families
Now,
that's not vegan, or not plant-based.
right, right, right. So aside from the family part, what would you say, like if you had somebody who's just living by themselves in their own apartment at their own house, they don't have that family
Right.
element to it. What would you say when they come to you? What is their biggest struggle going plant-based or going vegan? So you mentioned giving up cheese. Okay, that's a common one that we've heard
Right.
before. And where do you get your protein, right? That's also another one.
Right.
But aside from those two, what are some of the lifestyle changes that someone has to struggle with, or is it a mindset thing that is the struggle?
I
Like, what
think,
are some of the biggest struggles that you've helped somebody work through?
yeah, I think that one piece of it is definitely mindset. It's huge. It's the why behind the why behind the why, truly, because when you're in the forest and there's no one else listening, you know, if you're in your apartment and there's no one else, it's you, like, and you get to decide what you want to do. So if that mindset there's no external accountability. So if that mindset isn't clear, then you can get into a rut. And if familiar and coping was what you used to do with food that, you know, maybe was not in line with the program or whatever,
Mhm.
align with this pattern, then you're going to slip into it. Because if you really didn't leave, if you're leaving it because of shoulds, I should eat better, I should eat healthier, I should eat plant-based, I should eat better for lupus or, whatever even if it's a really dire, health issue, it's still those shoulds. In the end of the day, they don't last. So one of the issues by far is mindset. But even with someone who's committed to it, let's say it's an ethical vegan, right? Where I use that just because there isn't just a little bit of suffering that you're okay with. You know what I mean? It's like you make the decision to not consider it food. But a huge gap that I've seen as a college professor and now is lack of cooking skills.
Ah,
And so there's so many convenience options. It's so easy to be omnivore and get convenience options. Everywhere has quick, easy, but there's so much of that food has animal products in it. So, in order to go plant-based and then to take it to the next level, whole food, I mean, you can get French fries, except for some places use lard and, beef tallow in the oil. But in general, I mean, you can get junk food
yeah.
that's vegan, but to be able to do the plant-based whole food, if you're someone who didn't grow up with parents who cooked, so that's the big issue is that my age group, my generation, our parents were kind of the last ones to have some cooking skills, and our grandparents most definitely. But now the younger generation, they're like two generations removed from
Yep.
cooking. And so they don't, and they haven't had to. And then now the youngest generation, doesn't even have to go to the grocery store because they just call Grubhub or I mean, like they're completely removed. So then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now you're eating plant-based whole food. And you look at a menu and you go, I don't see anything on here. I'm going to have to cook. And they don't even think that, I mean, very crazy. People will drive past grocery stores and say there's no place to eat except fast food, even though you could walk into a grocery store and you could grab an apple and a banana. And I mean, there's food there, but people don't even and there's fast food there.
Don't even
They don't
see it.
even consider. They don't even consider it. So, but we're brainwashed into thinking fast means fast food restaurant.
Right.
So
Right.
they're like, well, what? I mean, and you've had people say that, I'm sure to you, oh my gosh, you don't eat animal products? What is there? What do you
Yeah,
eat?
exactly. What's
Like,
left?
what's left? Not even looking at the protein question, but just what do you eat?
Yeah.
And I say the opposite when I have a participant, and one of the question or two of the questions we ask is, how often do you eat fruits and vegetables? And I'll have adults, pregnant women and adults say sometimes or never for fruits and vegetables. And I ask them, what do you eat? Because my whole life is fruits and vegetables. So I'm trying to picture a plate where,
The
I say
balance.
lettuce, like salsa. I mean, nothing like an apple. And they'll straight up tell me, no. I said, well, what do you eat? Well, frozen chicken nuggets and beef
Mm,
sticks and hot Cheetos and
wow.
no
Wow.
food. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
really no fruits and
It's all
vegetables. It's all processed, whatever. So,
peanut
so
butter
those
jelly.
are, so those are two, areas where there's that lack, because the lack of cooking skills also extends to lack of confidence to even try. It's
Ah,
not just,
interesting.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
just that they don't know how, it's they don't even go, like, I don't even go there,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
they won't even entertain it.
Now, I know that I know that you and I follow a lot of the similar influencers. Switching into more like interview questions now, since we kind of
Mhm.
got on that topic. But have you read Dr. Greger's new book on how not to age?
Yes, I have.
Ah, you've gotten it. What are some of the things that you have taken away? Some things that were ahas and some things that, well, you already knew, and you said, well, of course.
He has a whole, like the whole book is just constant, one thing after another, after another, after another, after another. So as far as brand new things, there hasn't been that many because it's amazing how much it just comes back to the evidence for the same plant-based whole food, greens, grains, beans,
Yeah, like
you
what?
know.
Like
So
specifically, are there
like
specific grains or greens?
all of them. I mean, that's the thing. Like it just keeps coming back to, and he's looking at very specific, trying to find as much research as possible on one or another. As far as making changes in my diet, I was already on the black cumin and almond. I've been doing those for years. So, some of that, because it's a culmination of a lot of his other research that he had been doing all
Right.
along. So I haven't found anything that I mean, it just reiterates what I'm already doing. I haven't found anything that was like, oh my gosh, I need to start doing that I'm not already doing. What about you? Did you find something that you
But no,
really,
I haven't read the book,
oh,
which
you
I
haven't
know
read it?
I've
Okay.
just watched an interview between he and Lewis Howes talking
Okay.
about the book and all the things that he
Yeah.
says about it.
Uh-huh.
And so that's kind of what got me thinking about asking you, like if you
Yeah.
read it and then what were the any ahas
Yeah.
that you had
No, I
from it.
mean, throughout, it was just, it made me want to project the one-liners up in my office when I'm trying to get people to eat more beans and when I'm trying to get them to eat more greens. And it's like, you guys, this actually turns back time in our cells. Like you need to be
Wow.
eating greens. So, that kind of thing. But it it's great because it brings it back to not having like weird concoctions and tinctures and eat the food, that it'll and move your
Yeah.
body, and and always whenever the sleep research, he brings up the sleep research and it's like, I know that's the one thing that makes it really hard when you're a go-getter. You got more things to
Staying
do
up
than time
late,
to
making
do
it
it.
happen, getting things done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, but I love learning about all the research that keeps backing up,
Hmm.
the same foods that we include. And it is amazing how detrimental the animal protein and the animal fat, that saturated fat is on the cellular level. It truly ages you.
Wow.
It does. I mean, and it's crazy because there's always been kind of an ongoing argument with vegetarianism and this is way before it got very popular, now, but
Yeah.
is it truly what you're benefiting from with the foods you're including, or is it what you're leaving behind? It's like that kind of
Mm. Hmm.
dichotomy. And so the answer is truly both. That just, there's a spectrum,
Yep.
um, Dr. Ornish talks about the spectrum, this idea that you make a little change and you get a little benefit, that it's never all or nothing. Every movement towards better, more healthful choices. And when I say better, related to the nutrient content and the, health qualities, but the more, not judgment, but the more you can get towards that, the more your cells will benefit. And so avoiding those damaging substances, but then also bringing in the support substances, that it truly is a symphony together. But it's so difficult even for me to wrap my head around how damaging the saturated fat, especially in the form of the animal products, is. And I think part of a huge piece of that is the delay. So if we were consuming it and we immediately got violently ill, like if someone has a peanut allergy, it would be very easy to make the argument, this is dangerous. You can see this is dangerous, but that's not what happens. And so when I look around and I see 99% of the people eating food that is killing them, I need to drink some water. When I see that, I look around and see 99% of the people eating food that is going to shorten their life and most definitely shorten their quality of life, their health span, it kills me because they don't believe it. They don't believe it. They
Man.
think they're going to be the exception. And
Right.
I used to teach that to my students. I
Yep.
would say, you're not going to be the exception. You think you will. You think you're going to be the one that's going to be able to do whatever and not have the consequences.
Now, you mentioned that the parents are not doing as much cooking, which is affecting the children. Now, do you feel like
Yep.
the children are more susceptible, even if the parents were cooking animal products and using butter? Now, with the children, the next generation eating more processed foods and getting Grubhub delivered,
Yep.
even if they were to eat vegan junk food, do you feel like they are more at a disadvantage health-wise than their parents were, even regardless of what they're eating, if they're eating all the junk food and the food made by restaurants every single day, do you feel like now that diet is more detrimental, even more than their parents were growing up in the 60s and 70s,
Yes, no
cooking their
question.
own food?
Yep, no question. And the research is very strong that cooking at home, even not great cooking at home, is better than eating out. So
Mm.
even when people, I mean, the fat calories, the salt calorie, or not no calories, but the salt intake, sugar intake is all lower when people eat at home. Even if it's not great for you food, eating out has just, we know portion sizes started to get big and now they're colossal. And
Mm.
even though we have the nutrition information on the franchises that have, a certain number of restaurants per state or whatever that have to declare that, they were hoping people would make better choices because they'd see, oh my gosh, this is 1,700 calories for the mac and cheese for the kids portion, that
Wow.
they don't make better decisions. They just say, oh, yep, I'm going to go for it. I'm out. I'm eating out. So
Wow.
so two big things are the sheer volume of the portions, the calorie density of what they're, the number of calories packed in, because everything has extra butter, everything has extra oil to keep things longer. So, if you have food that dries up because you're putting it in a to-go container, and by the time that the client or customer gets it, it's kind of dried up, they're not going to be happy. But if you add some oil as an oil slick, then when it gets to them, it's still in pretty good shape because the oil has
Mm.
fermented, I mean,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
then it makes a difference. But that's, 4,000 calories a pound for
Wow.
oil.
Yes.
So
Now,
it doesn't take much. Yeah.
now you mentioned portion sizes. Now,
Hmm.
if you're eating, yeah, like a pound of mac and cheese, even if it's vegan cheese, it's still not, yeah, it's still horrible to your body and your health and arteries. Now,
Hmm.
what about if you are eating only whole foods, whole plant foods? Now,
Hmm.
would you say there's any restriction on that? Could you say you eat as much as you want? Or what is your opinion on portion sizes with whole foods?
Well, it depends on what those whole foods are. So when you had mentioned a pound of mac and cheese, it depends on how you're making it. So if you're making it with commercial vegan cheese that uses coconut oil and is ridiculously high in fat, then yeah, you're going to jam up those calories really quick. But if you're using a cheese, maybe from my book, or a cheese where you use butternut squash or something like that is part of the recipe, then your caloric density is much less. And then what are you using for macaroni? Is it truly white pasta, or is it a legume-based pasta? Or is it a combination of vegetables and a legume pasta? So it's still mac and cheese. I just made a mac and cheese that included broccoli and included purple cabbage and all bok choy, and it was still mac and cheese, but it was not anything like the white white pasta and
Right.
high fat cheese sauce. But so the nuance really makes a difference. So if you're eating calorie density wise, depends on what you're eating. If you're eating peanut butter all day, you're going to get high calorie intake. It's plant based and it's natural, but it's very calorically dense.
What
So
about if
can
you just say
you,
just the peanuts? Because
so
that's the whole
peanuts,
food.
right. So peanuts have much better research behind them as far as they've done studies where they've added peanuts to people's diet and kept everything else the same. And we expected them to gain weight with the peanuts because you're adding a high fat food, more
Right.
calories than the other. And we don't see that happen, but we do see it with peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the issue becomes breaking down that fat, those peanuts, into small enough particles to absorb versus poop out. I mean, basically, you're pooping out peanut particles. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of peas. And that is ridding your body of some of those calories that you normally would have absorbed. But in peanut butter, you absorb them very quickly. And peanut butter is not a dangerous food, so to speak. But as far as like with unrestricted, just eating it all day, all day, all day, it's possible to exceed your caloric needs. But if you are eating more of the whole foods that are lower in calorie density, then there doesn't need to be a restriction on how much you're eating. It should definitely be to satiety. But you can't do that when you're using a lot of oil, when you're using, a lot of the nut butters and some of those things that are just so calorically dense, the sugar syrups and things like that, because
Right.
we don't get that trigger for satiety. It just tastes good. You just want to eat more. I
Right.
was, even with nuts, I remember talking to my students when we were talking about calorie density and saying, if you sit down in front of the television with a bag of mixed nuts or, even the sugar coated, nuts, and you're eating them, no time ever have I ever heard in my little head say, slow down. You're eating 900 calories a cup. No, all you think about when you're eating those nuts are, these are good. Where can I get some more? So it
Right.
doesn't have that. And then afterwards, you may have a tummy ache, but it doesn't help you in the process. Just like with fast food, when you're eating it, or like Starbucks had a scone, and I thought it was like 800 calories, something ridiculous. And you don't eat that and think, oh my gosh, I just ate an 800 calorie. No, you're thinking that little dry thing, that was
Yeah.
800 calories. You don't
Right.
feel
So
full. But if
small.
you ate 800 calories in apples, you'd feel full.
Right. Right. Now, so if you were eating just the whole foods,
Hmm.
would you say that you can just eat as much as you want? Like if you're eating cabbage leaves or you're eating broccoli. Now, is broccoli still a whole food if you've cooked it down,
Yes,
steamed it
without
down so
question.
it's mush or softer so
Don't
it goes in?
don't mush it. Do not mush broccoli. Do not mush any vegetable. Okay, so this is a public service announcement. If anyone overcooks vegetables, do not serve those. Turn them into a creamy soup. Okay? Please. Because I do not want people to become vegetable haters because they had a limp piece of asparagus that could have been turned into a delightful asparagus, creamy asparagus soup. Okay, enough for that public service
Okay,
announcement.
that's
But,
good to know.
but yes, no, you can't. You cannot overdo it. If we're talking about vegetables and we're talking even about fruit, you will get to the point where you are full before you exceed your calorie limit. So now everybody has nuanced responses as far as to different food amounts and blood sugar and the rest of it. But if you're eating intact food that you're not just blending, you're not turning everything into a smoothie and just sucking it down, that's a different situation. Or juicing, that's different. But you're asking about broccoli, you steam broccoli, right? It cooks down. Spinach, you steam spinach, or I like the collards and the kale and the arugula and all that better. But
Hmm.
like the bok choy, you cook it down, right? It shrinks. Not an issue at
No
all.
limit to that.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
Now, when
Some
somebody,
people, go ahead.
well, I'm just gonna go off on a different subject. Do you have something
Yeah.
else to say about Whole Foods?
No, I was just going to say some people sometimes get into trouble with not only the nuts, but with dried fruit
Oh,
because
yep.
they would never eat, 15 plums, but they'll
Right.
eat 15
15
plums
dried
dried.
plums. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're like, yeah, well, they're dried. So, but again, I mean, you get tired of it before you even get there, you know.
Now, when you're starting to make the change, or your clients that you're working with are starting to make the change from eating this overly, we'll call it flavorful food, like extra salt, extra sugar, extra oil, the hot flamey Cheetos,
Right.
when they are readjusting from that into eating whole foods, there's a
Mhm,
huge
mhm.
flavor impact with that. How long would you say, like, what's the pathway like going from one side of eating the Cheetos,
Right.
the fiery, over to enjoying the taste of
Mhm.
broccoli or peas, butternut squash? What does that
Yeah.
pathway look like?
Well, it's different. I think, well, we know it's different for everybody. Part of it is that mindset piece, because what we know for sure with research that what you anticipate something's going to taste like will usually dictate more than what it actually is. So
Oh,
this may sound crazy, but they've done studies where they have given people strawberry yogurt and they labeled it chocolate and people described it as chocolatey. Okay, now that defies logic because it doesn't make sense. It's strawberry,
it's all
but
perception, isn't
it's
it?
so
Wow.
perception.
That's
And
so much like marketing too.
oh, it
It's the
is.
pre-frame. I
It
will tell
is.
you what you are going to experience. And then your actual experience is exactly what I've said.
Uh-huh. It's the felt self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if
Oh,
you
man.
really think, and they've done studies, this is fascinating with smoothies.
Yeah.
And they did it where they did, or milkshakes. I think they called them milkshakes. So they had a low calorie milkshake and a high calorie milkshake. And they gave it to participants. And I think they did a washout. So they gave the same, so they used the people as their own controls, which really cleans up a study. But where they asked them to rate their fullness after they were eating. And then they also looked at I think like how much food they had at a subsequent meal, because they were trying to gauge satiety and how long. And
Right.
so when the milkshake was labeled low calorie, then they ended up getting hungry sooner and they ate more at their next meal than when it was high calorie and they both had the same calories and they were both high calorie.
And so the only difference was one was labeled low
Correct.
calorie.
That was
Wow.
it.
So
So
talking about the
it's
pathway of going from super
right.
super flavorful foods into eating
Stimulated.
that.
Right.
What did you say?
Super stimulated. Like it's
Super over,
over
yeah, overstimulating foods.
stimulation
Oh,
palette. Yeah. So it depends on the mindset. And that's, kind of how we were talking. But it also, so you can't look at this change as deprivation, is where I was going. Because if you
oh,
do, then
okay.
everything will be suboptimal. Like everything will taste not as good because this is my punishment. You know what I mean? It's like, now I have diabetes and this is my punishment. Nothing is going to taste good. I mean, I have worked in the hospital where people are with high blood pressure and we know the dietitians are going to come around and take away the salt and everything's going to taste like nothing, until they give their tongue a break. And this is the next piece of what you asked because then they go back to salty and it's so salty. It's the smoker who stops that now is like, get out of my face because they've adjusted, to the change, in their senses. So I think one of the keys can be to complete rest from that stuff because it kind of feels
So is
like
that fasting?
no, well, it could be if you wanted to do a supervised. The fasting situation really needs to be supervised if it's going to be an extended situation. I'm talking about a fast, quote unquote, from fast food, where you're just not doing that super stimulation. Now, some people need it to be like more of an elimination diet, which is fine. And, I do that with some of my clients if that's what they wish. But others we just need to start crowding out some of the biggest offenders, and just have that more of that um, exploration adventure mindset of, ooh, I really, so like for an example, they may use cheese on a salad, right? Like maybe they're used to using feta on a salad. Now, why do they do that? Is it because they just love using animal products? No, it's because they like salty, a little sour, and creamy. Like those are the flavor profiles. So then how do you do that? How do you replace that in a salad that scratches those itches? You know what I mean? It kind of like,
Mm.
so that's a way we can go because most of the time it is an experience. It's, oh, I
Uh-huh.
like the creaminess. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that
Right.
I love that thing. So
Right.
that can really help. And also a huge piece of eating the way that they were eating, they block out how they actually feel after they eat. No
Ah,
one
interesting.
seems to feel amazing. It may taste good, but they're like, oh, I'm like, okay, we're going to be able to walk. We're going to run after dinner. And they're like, no, we're going to sit. Like, I don't feel good. My ankles are swelling. I got to rate, all those
Yeah.
things. And it's, people make this change. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say, oh, my energy. Ah,
Yes.
amazing. And you think, well,
Yeah.
why? Why the energy?
Is it bad? Yeah.
Because their blood is actually flowing. Because we see
Right.
within minutes, blood slows down when you infuse fat. So, of course,
Wow.
now we're seeing oxygen to the brain, oxygen to the muscles. You feel like getting up.
Oh my gosh.
It's huge.
Well,
So, once they
going
get a taste of it, I think, no pun intended or pun intended, they
I
start
get
to
a taste of all
transition.
that energy. Well, good. I'm
Yeah.
glad this leads me on to one question before I get to the last two. And this one is, what would you say are some of the, we'll say, miraculous healings that you have found when somebody goes vegan? Like for me, when I went vegan, it was maybe 4 months after I no longer had to wear glasses. My eyesight cleared up and I can wear glasses if like I've got a cold and there's a lot of pressure in my head. I
Right.
might wear them to look at a computer screen.
Hmm.
My eyesight wasn't super bad, but I was starting to wear glasses more and more. But when I went vegan,
Hmm.
my eyes just healed. I guess I took the pressure off the optic nerve. So that was it for me. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that you have seen with your clients?
I have seen some lose allergies that they used to really struggle with.
What
Food
kind of allergy?
allergies, as well as kind of environmental hay fever, type. That's really helpful. Even to where like skin peeling and all of that, the eczema,
Eczema?
that.
Hmm.
Mhm. I have seen huge changes with acne,
Yeah, you did
gigantic.
mention that. Yes.
Yeah, that is huge. Um, Energy, but that also, people who used to have chest pain, people who would get out of breath. I mean, more than just like, oh, I have, energy. Like they were saddled with fatigue, for
Yeah.
really good reason. Huge changes in blood sugar. So, not being on medication anymore. Um, just functional wise, they can do more physical activity than they ever used to be able to do. Um,
Yeah,
Trying
so
to
that
think.
allergies is, I think you mentioned
Yeah.
before acne. You said you healed
Oh,
a lot
man.
of acne,
Yeah,
right? For yourself.
I did. And I had students who saw marked changes in the acne. And that is so important for your own self image
Now,
and confidence.
100%, 100%. But now I
Yeah.
do have to jump to the last two questions that I want
All
to
right.
ask. Now, in
Okay.
30 seconds or less, please don't hate me for asking this.
Okay.
What do you say when people ask you, where do you get your protein?
I get my protein where your protein gets its protein. No. Yes, absolutely. I talk about legumes, legumes, legumes. I love legumes. So there's protein in all of the food that we eat, including vegetables and whole grains and a minuscule amount in fruit, but nuts and seeds as well. But legumes are the powerhouse. So
Okay.
I include legumes in basically every meal. And lately, I've been on a kick for split pea soup for breakfast. And that sounds crazy, but it powers me through a full day And it's amazing. So yes, I sing the praises of legumes
Oh,
every
that's
single
awesome.
day.
All right, and now for the last question.
Okay.
What do you say to people who say, "Oh, I'd go vegan except for the cheese"? How
Yeah.
do you respond to that?
There is life after cheese. I have multiple recipes in my cookbook. I am now 14 years, basically almost 14 years, from leaving cheese and animal-based cheese, and I don't miss it. Every day I think about what's involved in that process and how, it takes 10 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cheese. So everything is concentrated in that, as well as being such a huge source of saturated fat, and sodium. And it's just, if you want diabetes, you eat cheese. And I don't want diabetes. So it doesn't make any sense to me. But I realize that people like the creamy, salty. So that's why I have recipes. And that's why I always think about new ways, to really get food that tastes amazing, just tastes amazing, and you don't even miss the cheese. The cheese becomes, it's interesting. There's I know that you've seen these, but the pizza places where you choose what to put on it, they're like the Blast and Mod and all these pizza places. And they have vegan cheese now, like every single one of them. And I never get it because they have so many vegetables, and it just covers it up and just takes away from all the wonderful flavors of the roasted garlic and the smoky mushrooms and the red bell pepper, roasted peppers and all those things, arugula. Why would you want just this glob, of fat on top of it? So there is so much life after cheese. And cheese is something that I think holds a lot of people back from, even those who don't want to make a full change to plant-based, that's the one thing that is really pushing the disease. I see a lot of gestational diabetes in my clients now, that I see at work. And a huge piece of it with, high weight gain during pregnancy is, oh, I love cheese. I eat cheese all the time. And I'm watching those blood sugar numbers go higher and higher. So,
Wow.
so yeah,
Could
I
you,
educate them about that.
would you, if somebody wanted to go plant-based except for the cheese, could they fix the rest of their diet and still maybe just hold on to that cheese that is their security blanket for,
Absolutely. It goes
would
back to
they
the
still
spectrum.
have the health increases, the benefits?
You're gonna see some, but you're never gonna see all of it. And it depends on how much cheese you're including. This isn't, it's not an activity in perfectionism, as far as with diet. But at the same time, it's also one of the things that if you move the needle on that, you get a huge return. So if it's something that's I mean, you start looking around and seeing how many meals have cheese in them. So if you take that away, you're making a huge impact. You know what I mean? It's not just like, oh yeah, every third Tuesday I eat something with cheese in it. No, people have it for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, for snack, you know what I mean? Like it's just, so it depends. I mean, if you're changing everything else, but you're eating it 5 times a day,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna cramp your style. But does someone ever have to be 100% da 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 to have health benefits? No, not at all. But if they're working on their blood sugars and they can't get them down, and that
Mm-hmm.
cheese is still sitting there, it's something we can work on. But you
Now,
don't need to be scared if, there is life after, and you can, like you said, you can hold on to it until it doesn't make sense anymore. And then if you're open to making consistent changes beyond, then you're open to it. If not, then that's fine. There are a lot of people who say, no, I'm going to do everything but. Good. I'll help you get there, because by not making a change because of that piece, it's the I would do it except for the cheese. So I'm not going to do that change at all. I'm
Yeah.
going to go get a hamburger. That is, that doesn't, make sense because you do see benefits all the way through. But it is that
Uh-huh.
spectrum. The more, more benefits because of more changes.
Gotcha. Now
So
you have a membership site. Now you've
I
got
do.
membership where somebody can come in and learn about all of these things that you're talking about and the way to navigate working with
Mhm.
families, the way to navigate the dynamic between maybe you're just living alone, maybe you've got
Right.
a husband
And
or a
how to
wife who doesn't want to change. What
exactly, and how to prepare the food for your life and have fun with it.
So you've mentioned bringing down blood lipids,
Mhm.
decreasing medications, gaining confidence in the kitchen, learning how to make your own plant foods and cook, work around your lifestyle, weight goals,
Mhm.
bringing down weight, acne reduction. Can you name, are there any other benefits that higher energy levels,
Mhm.
benefits that somebody would expect to gain while being a part of your membership?
Friends, friends that eat this way, that are striving for making choices that are in line with health. Um, Friends who may be more aware of their choices with regard to the environment and with regard to animal suffering, and because that is another piece of this, that we didn't talk about. So there's something about making that change that impacts hormones. And I don't know that this has been studied very much, but you hear people talk about when you eat animal products that are full of their own
Yeah.
hormones that were not treated well, and in that slaughterhouse type situation, how can our physiology not be impacted by that
Yeah.
aggression and things like that?
Yeah.
And I had a student who was so cute. I'll never forget. He came in after he had switched his diet. And this is a college student. He said, "I don't know what's happening, Mrs. Hagenburger. I don't know." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Things are weird. Like I feel like volunteering." So I started volunteering in my community. And he's like, "I don't know." And I said, "Yes, yes, I understand." He says, I just feel like a better human being, better for himself, not again judging
Yeah.
other people, but just like he has more purpose and that he just feels like more of a
Wow.
community member. So that's a huge piece. But what's hard right now is that there are a lot of us that are eating this way, but we're all spread out. And so often, to come back to what we were talking about with families, is if you're the only one in the family, you're going to feel pretty darn alone. It really doesn't matter if there are lots of other people in the world that are eating this way. They're not your friends and they're not your family. And so, by having a community that's safe, not just something on social media where you don't know who's in there, but actually a safe community where you can say, "I really love pancakes and I don't know how to make them vegan. And I tried and it's not working. Help." And we all come running, and we keep each other with ideas and help, with all kinds of things well beyond nutrition, but health in
Gotcha.
general, that it doesn't feel alone. And to be able to do that no matter where you are, because it's on Zoom. So you don't have to be close to a certain place. You don't have to drive. You don't have to, So to be able to have that community of like-minded people that you can trust is really huge. And just that, we were talking about accountability piece. So not in the way of like, you must do this, but
Yeah.
just like, what's going on? "Oh, you made this recipe?" "Yeah, I know. I wanted to make this one, but I didn't." "Okay, I'm going to do it too." Like our
Right,
prep
right.
togethers. We get on Zoom and we're all prepping. And I can't tell you how many people in my membership have said, "I love the prep togethers because I have those vegetables that are sitting in the refrigerator. And so to be able to click on Zoom and talk to my friends while I'm chopping, I love this." And then they tell me, "And look, Now I have a whole refrigerator full at my fingertips of everything chopped. And it was fun. It wasn't drudgery because they were just hanging out with their buddies and asking me questions. And so we have batch cook besties, we have prep togethers, we have all kinds of things. The meal planning parties, so that it makes this joyful. It absolutely makes it joyful. We have a whole
Wow.
series on
Yep.
joyful movement and strength training. I have a specific trainer that comes in and does video content for us. And so we're lifting weights, we're doing all that. So it's really comprehensive.
And if somebody wants to jump in on that, or what's a good website or resource?
So the best way, I think, just as one place is the nutritionprofessor.com. So you have to make
Okay.
sure it starts with but the nutritionprofessor.com. And you'll see right there, there'll be a little video just welcoming you to my website. And then the ways that I can support you. And that
Okay.
would include the membership, and you can jump into more of an explanation about it. We always have a 1 week free trial, so you can get in there and check it out. You can find my books there. I have 2 books, and then you can find all the video and recipes that I have been putting up for 12 years and counting. So all those resources are at the nutritionprofessor.com. And I
Okay.
do work one-on-one with clients. So I have a very small number of clients that I work one-on-one with, but that's also accessible through a contact.
Got you. And that was what I was going to ask you. If somebody did
Mhm.
want to have a chat with you specifically, just one-on-one, maybe they've got a specific concern, they want to know if this resource is in the membership, or maybe you can help them create a plan for themselves if they're coming in with a lot of acne. You'll say, okay, watch this
Right.
module, this module, this module. Would you have um a booking link there that they
I
could?
do. I do. I have a way for them to contact me, and then they can make a discovery call or a,
Okay.
quick chat type meeting with me.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do corporate wellness. I do all kinds of things. So
Okay. Well, awesome.
contacting me, and, even to just bypass all of that, just
Yeah.
the nutritionprofessor@gmail.com gets to me as well. So
Okay.
I'm
Well,
the
awesome.
only one who looks at my email. So I'm self-managed. So yeah, I will be
Okay.
responding.
Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, we'll send those links out and have them available.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kat.